And let's open. Oh, I should double check. You guys can hear me okay, right? Awesome. Thank you. Father, Mother, God, Source Spirit, Creator of all that is, thank you for bringing us together, giving us a great opportunity to teach, practice, and learn awakening dynamics. Thank you, and namaste. All right. So, um, I had what I think was a cool idea for our tips on energy healing today. And I'm glad you were all here because I'm going to be asking you guys for suggestions to go into the article that will be published on YouTube forever. Ooh. So here's your chance to leave a legacy. Um, what it's about is, let's see, what did I call it? We called it before a session. And so basically in level 2, we walked you through just about every step of running a session, right? Explain the process, covering muscle testing, how much to ask, how to prioritize, yada, yada, yada. This is not that. This is how to prepare yourself ahead of the session in the 2, 5, 10, 15 minutes. And I'm going to share with you guys what I do. And then I'd love to hear from the group. What are the things you like to do before a session to make sure you're grounded, focused, ready to work with someone? And so this is kind of like the foundational downloads. There's an enormous amount of personalization and style here and I'm going to kind of, as we talked about in level 2, I'm going to give you guys kind of a spectrum. On one side of the spectrum, not the autistic spectrum, that's all mine. You guys have to find your own spectrum, but this is a different spectrum. And so on one hand, you don't necessarily have to do anything before a session, right? You can just show up. Obvious stuff, probably best if you haven't been drinking, right? Things like that. But other people like to do a lot of preparation, especially life coaches. They seem to be, really into like the morning ritual. And it's so this is a little different than the morning ritual. This is the pre-client ritual. So here are the things that I like to do. And then I want to hear from you guys what you like to do so we can share with the group, and you guys can be a co-author on an article that's going to get at least 15 views on YouTube, maybe 20 if we're lucky. Yeah, so watch out. The fame is overwhelming, I know. First thing I like to do is, and this is just me, when I book an hour session, I try to ensure that every single client I ever work with gets an hour. So I generally put 75 minutes on my calendar. Just it still gives you some time to run over. Now, there is a huge downside, which is you're losing 15 minutes of your life for every session. But I do that because I find the stress of being late and that cascading is worth it for me to spend the time. And I like to have, if possible, at least 2 or 3 minutes, maybe 5, between sessions to get my head clear and go through the stuff. So, I'd say for me, 5 minutes is more than enough. For you guys, we'll figure out what it is for you. So make sure you schedule yourself so that you have 2, 3, 5 minutes, right? I've done it, but it's a little exhausting to hang up the phone and call up someone else immediately, right? It wears you down faster. So first thing I do should be obvious. Before I connect to someone, I send unconditional love to me and them and the spaces we're in. Seems like an easy way to start. Shouldn't take you more than 10 seconds or so, right? So that's kind of step 1. Step 2, I then like to use the clean macro to clean my space and their space. And, in terms of permission, I find we can get within reason. For the most of the time, implicit permission works just fine. That if someone has booked a healing session with you, they're there, they put it on the calendar, they paid money, whatever, right? That it's fine to clean the space they're in immediately. If you have any concerns about that, just ask. I've done it both ways. It seems to work just fine through the implicit permission. But if that bothers you or you're concerned, ask, right? If that's okay. I also like to make sure I have a beverage handy. Now, there's a couple reasons. For me, it's mostly just about my throat and keeping my mouth wet, because I've had a lot of issues, a lot of respiratory illness as a child. So I have to be a little careful of my voice. The killer app for your voice is tea with raw honey in it. So if you guys ever strain your voice, that's kind of your first go-to. So if you have a lot of sessions, you might want to do tea and raw honey. I think water's fine most of the time. A lot of the time I'll do iced tea or coffee. But part of that goes to, do you like to surrogate for people or do you have them test themselves? If you're going to be surrogating, I would be a little more concerned with hydration, assuming that your skill level for muscle testing isn't high enough. In other words, when you're good enough at muscle testing, don't worry about being dehydrated. You'll still do fine. If you're still struggling a little bit sometimes and you think you might need to surrogate or double check for someone, be more careful. Tea and caffeine and coffee have caffeine, which can dehydrate you. But for me, it's mostly about keeping your mouth wet so it's easier to speak. We talked about clean. And the last thing I like to do before I start a session is, it is one of the challenges of doing this work is you need to do your best to connect to someone and be present in supporting them for the entire session. So ideally, you're not thinking about, the bills or your fight with your spouse or when you got to get up tomorrow, right? And so if there is something really big and crushing that's difficult for me to let go of, because that happens to everyone sometimes, right? You may have a family member in the hospital or whatever, right? You're in the middle of some crisis. I'm going to give you guys two different processes that I've gotten from different teachers. They both work for me, but I'll give you two. One is the come back later. So we cover this in level 2. Basically, if you have some big concern or a pain or whatever that's affecting your ability to focus on your client, ask nicely and tell it, please come back at a time later in the day. And it's amazing. It works. I can speak from personal experience. It sounds kind of weird, but you say, hey, come back at 7:30 tonight, when you'll be done with your work and you can relax. And then 7:30, you're soaking in the tub and all this anxiety, right? It's like, oh yeah, I told you to come back now. So that works. And that's a good one. Another one that I've heard is similar is to build an energy box and put your issue in the box for the session and then take it out when you're done. It's a symbolic way of going, hey, there's nothing I can do for my mom in the hospital in the next hour, right? I need to work with my client. So take all that stress. I like to just imagine taking some boards, building a little box, right? Pick your issue, put it in the box, close the lid, set it aside, do your session. And when you're done, open the box. Cool. Two versions of doing the same thing. Try both, see which one you like better. And, all that for me, most times we're talking 2 to 3 minutes is plenty. I don't need a lot of time to get warmed up for a session. And the last thing I will generally do is just to try to feel my body. Remind yourself that you're human and you have a stupid physical body on a stupid physical planet that you got to drag around with you, right? As much as we find it annoying and limiting. But, just feel your body. The easiest ways to do this is just to feel the weight of your feet on the ground, right? The weight of your butt on the chair or the armrest or whatever. That what Carl Wolf used to say is that gravity is basically the way the earth holds us to her bosom. It's like a mother's hug. And it's a pretty important one, because without that, we'd float off into space and we'd all die. Huh? Yeah. We laugh, but the Earth's gravity is pretty important. So just remind yourself you have a body and go for it. Any questions on this stuff? If you guys have questions, go for it. Otherwise, next up, I'm going to ask you guys, is there anything you like to do ahead of the session that you want to share? So questions first. All right. Anybody want to share something? What is something you like to do before you start a session? Yana, please go first.
Yeah.
Yana, then Brian. You need a minute?
I haven't worked with awakening dynamics.
That's okay. If it's from some other way, that's fine. I don't mind.
Yeah. What I'm thinking is which sounds silly, but making an intention
Okay.
for the session to be to the highest and best good or something
Okay.
for the
Cool.
client, right?
Me-
And one more thing, as far as having an issue that's bothering, there is a different process of raising your own energy that bringing in some positive energy that would be helpful.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
for,
No, it's a good suggestion. I mean, I find that huh, small to medium-sized issues I can kind of beam away, but it may take a little longer. I may need 5 or 10 minutes. Things bigger than that, I put it in a box or tell it to come back. But for sure, definitely, if you have the ability to raise up your vibration in a short enough time so that it doesn't bother you, I think that's a wonderful approach. I've just found it takes a little longer than the others. But if you got a little extra time, I think it's a great suggestion. Brian.
Well, for first of all, when you were talking about tea, I agree with you. I like to use tea as well. I want to recommend that you want to add lemon to it, not just honey. That's an old actor's trick because I used to be an actor years ago, and that helps with giving your voice
Okay,
pliable and
I've heard that too. I've heard some people like lemon. I've heard
yeah,
honey,
lemon.
and I've heard lemon and honey. I should try it with some lemon, see if that helps.
Yeah, and it does help with the voice. And what I do is I clear my energy. Um, Not the way that you do. I usually more of a Reiki practitioner where I
Okay,
push across myself, my
that's fine.
abdomen like this, and like I said, but I also do the dead push away thing that I zip my field up, and I usually start it with a prayer, and it's very similar to the prayer you use, like God, Mother, Father, Spirit, Creator, all that is. Thank you for the opportunity to work with this person, and thank you for the power to work with to send me the power to work to the energy to heal this person. That's what I do a lot of times.
No, it's
And
great.
sometimes I also use the unity prayer, the light of God surrounds me, the love of God enfolds me, the power of God protects me, the Prince of God watches over me, and where I am God is all as well, and I use that sometimes too. That helps me get centered, and I go from there, pretty much.
Okay, oh, it's a great suggestion. Yeah, and in terms of some of the rituals, you guys know me. I'm not really weird about mixing modalities. I just say just make sure you know what you're doing, right? It's kind of like cover songs that almost everyone prefers the version of the song that they first heard, right? And so I think a lot of these rituals, you tend to prefer the one that you first learned. So I got no problem with that, right? If you like the Reiki way or something of clearing your space, getting ready, go for it. Go crazy. As long, again, I don't mind you guys mixing as long as you know what you're doing, right? It'd be like, do they want to let you behind the counter at the compounding pharmacy to just make whatever you want? No, not unless you know what you're doing. That could be dangerous, right? Careful with that. But I think that's a great suggestion. So basically a similar invocation that I used to open and close the groups. So that's awesome. And I'm writing your ideas down so you will be immortalized. Anyone else want to share anything?
I put in the chat, I like to make sure interferences aren't happening
Okay.
and or blocked from happening.
How do you check that?
I just have intentions of different block things. I don't check for it. I
Okay.
just do it. Yeah. I have a macro that's interferences, but I don't tend to use that one. Hesitation and confusion is a new one I use. So if
Okay.
anyone has ill will, they'll hesitate, then be confused and just kind of wander away because they don't know what they're doing
Okay.
anymore.
Oh, very cool. Anyone else want to share something they do ahead of the session to get yourself ready? If not, I will ask you once again at the end of practice group if anything comes to you. Then once it's posted on YouTube, it's there forever. Just a fun thing, just so you guys know. If you change what's in the notes on a video, I've been told it blows up all the search history and rankings. So you can change the title, but don't change the description, or you basically lose all the YouTube mojo you've gotten from the views. Seems stupid, right? Seems really stupid, but Audrey.
Hi, I like making sure that everything is quiet so I can
Okay,
focus.
good.
And so, I can check my calendar because I want to give that individual undivided attention.
Yep.
I like to know beforehand what we're going to work on so I can
Okay.
evaluate, so I can study, so I can get some hits and use whatever therapeutic tools I have.
Okay. So you're more of a know-it-all kind of practitioner. I don't mean that in a negative way, that you like more information to prepare, as opposed to a know-nothing that prefers to just show up.
Whatever it takes and whatever's going on, but I prefer, to have it thought out
Mm-hmm.
and, to come in agreement with the individual,
Okay.
talk it over, okay, because this is what I hear, whatever it is they're going about and get an agreement on it. Definitely use macros up the yin yang. I will use whatever tools I have and a combination
Now,
of
my anatomy is a little rusty. Can you point where on your body the yin yang is that I'm putting the macros up?
like a machine gun. They are so effective and so powerful. And I definitely use them to the advantage of myself and them and the individual because, that is what's important is because we're here to be of service to that individual. I check in with them as, to see how they're doing, if it's too much, if, we need to switch gears.
Mhm.
And sometimes we pray, there's different modalities, whatever intuition tells me or, suggests.
That's great. No, I love your suggestion about preparing your space. What I put in was eliminating clutter and noise because I think they're both drag you down.
Yeah.
Just so you guys know, though, neither is a hard block to doing healing. It can be noisy, right? It can be cluttered. Don't let it stop you. But when you have the ability to prepare your space, it gives you a little advantage. Does that make sense? So, if possible, clean, organized space, not a lot of noise. Lynn, please, what do you have to suggest?
I'm the opposite. I don't need to know anything. I just need to make sure that I'm fully present.
Yeah, I'm more of a know nothing.
Yeah.
Again, it's totally a matter of style. I get so much in my head and my analytical mind takes over. I do better not knowing ahead of time. But I always try to honor my client's preparation. So I'm very careful if they send me notes or a background or whatever to have that ready right in front of me when we start. Because I always find it annoying when you like work with someone and you write a blurb for them and they're like, oh yeah, no, I didn't have time to look at that. So, but I have it there, but I try not to look at it ahead of time for the same reasons as Lynn. Because once this thing gets going, it's very hard to simmer it down. But a lot of you guys aren't nearly as bad about that as I am. Great suggestions. Anything else? Otherwise, we'll go to our groups. All right, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Is there anybody that does not want to work and or would prefer a group of 3? Lynn, okay. Anyone else? Brian and Julio, I just want to double check, make sure you guys are there. You want a partner?
I'm here.
Awesome. Julio, there. Awesome. Cool. All right. So Lynn wants a group of 3? No problem. Lynn, did you just not want to not up to working today, or you'd rather be in a group of 3? Just to be clear.
And I'll go in group of 3 if you're going to, Brent. I can do that.
All right. No problem.
Group of 3.
Cool. Either way is fine. You just want to be clear on what you're looking for.
Oh, either,
Okay. No, I get it. Sometimes you feel like a nut, sometimes you don't, I get that. I grew up in the 70s, so those commercials are indelibly burned into my brain. Now, Yana, are you in Massachusetts or are you in some sort of Catholic mass? I'm not sure which mass you're in. If you're actually in mass, I think that's pretty cool, you know. All right.
I
you
mean,
were good.
Massachusetts.
Okay,
I put all.
Massachusetts. All right, so we're still waiting on Audrey, Sheila, and Rebecca. Oh, I like your comment, Sheila. You got your commercial in my brain. You got your brain in my commercial.